Welcome to the Leading at the Next Level podcast with Dove Development and Consulting, the show built to provide ongoing support for your leadership journey. I am absolutely thrilled today to get this opportunity to chat with my friend Thomas Ray. He's an executive vice president of Bank of the James. I'm not going to butcher the rest of his title. I'm going to let him share that with you. But before I turn it over to him to give the proper professional background and industry experience explanation, a little bit about him, I'll say that I met Thomas in the summer of 2015, just as I was starting to plan the first Live to Lead Harrisonburg event that we ever did. A friend of mine, his name's Rob Frazier. He says, you need to know Thomas. Maybe he can give you some pointers on how to do an event. And strategically, over the last 10 years, I've had absolutely fantastic interaction with Thomas about how we can do better events, how can we broaden our reach, how can we make more of a positive impact on people. So I just absolutely cherish the relationship, the friendship, and just the opportunity to learn from him over the course of this last decade. So Thomas, will you give a proper background overview of what you do in the industry you're in?
Well, yeah, and first I'll say likewise, Wes, it's been a pleasure. I'm glad Rob and Travis and others kind of introduced us, and sharing friends with friends always works out pretty well for me. So, executive vice president, Bank of the James, was hired 10 years ago to start the region here in Harrisonburg. So I serve as the market president for our region, but also the regional commercial executive for the commercial growth of all of our regions for Bank of the James. So we're about a $1 billion bank. I've got 20 years of commercial lending experience as an analyst and as a lender, and the last 10 have been probably some of the most fun I've had in my career. So, and still going strong.
Well, you touched on it right there. When we met, you had just started the Bank of the James of the Shenandoah Valley and really launched that, and you've grown that over the years. Talk to me about what your clear purpose has been for accepting leadership responsibility in all you've done, not just with Bank of the James, and that's been significant. You've done a wonderful job there. Yeah. Talk to me about all the different things that you've taken on leadership roles in, Rotary and all the different stuff. You have a tremendous impact and reach.
Yeah. So, I mean, just from a clear purpose statement, it's others focused. It's always been others focused. And, early on in my career, I sort of took that approach because I wasn't in a production role, but I could serve in different things like Rotary, like United Way, like Chamber of Commerce, right? And I could just a chance to give back to the community because I felt like I had more in my tank than I was using on a daily basis. And what I realized over time is that's actually a pretty good leadership and growth strategy too. Because when you make it about other people and you make it about empowering other people, that attracts folks to you, right? Whether it be teammates, whether it be future clients. It's never been about me and hitting a goal or a production number for me. It's all about how can I help others? And, the downstream effect of that has been really good results and numbers in the back end. So, yeah, I mean, it's been something that, I kind of take, it's sort of like, was it the old, is it the Spider-Man quote? Those who have, great power have great responsibility, something like that. But, it's like, we've got, in my role, in my position with my experience, I can give a lot of value to Bank of the James, but if I only keep that for Bank of the James, am I really doing what is being asked of me, right? From a holistic standpoint. And so to be able to give back to my kids, I've had the opportunity to do, coach youth sports. Not that I'm a great coach, but I hope I'm a great motivator and hope that they have a great experience. And then being involved with the nonprofit community, things like Valley Business Keynote, helping you with Live to Lead and others. And just, how can I just help others achieve their goal, knowing that rising tide lifts all ships, and just the kind of satisfaction of just seeing others people's success is a lot of fun.
Yeah, you mentioned something there about others focused. You and I read a similar book, and I shared with a friend of mine. This isn't going to be a faith-based conversation, although you and I can have that all day long anytime you want to. But the reality, I mentioned to a friend who's an atheist. He doesn't have the same belief system I do, and I love him despite it. I said, man, I love you. You can have your opinion and be wrong. But there's this thing that says, as you sow, so shall you reap. And if we do that about other people, it comes back, and people want to be a part of that. So appreciate you.
Yeah, and I think it's even more than that. I mean, I'm only 16 years into my faith journey. So a lot of my career was before I had any real understanding of what I truly believe today. And again, not getting into a sermon series, but still that idea of like trying to give back and trying to help others. I think it was something, my mom was a special ed teacher for 30 plus years in the school systems. My dad was always a servant leader in his roles. And so I saw that modeled that, it was never about us. It was about how can we help other people and how can we serve other people. And so those are just things that were instilled in me early on. And I think, spiritually, as that part of me has grown, that's given me more focus and clarity on how to use those gifts. But those gifts, regardless of where you're at from a faith or spiritual standpoint, it's really just a true leadership and honestly a true community standpoint. I think we as a society are too concerned with the things that are about ours. We have this scarcity mindset that I got to hold on to mine. It's like, well, maybe if we would just kind of help others get a little bit more, we might realize there's a little bit more in it for us too. Right.
Yeah. Well, and make no mistake, the friend that I'm referencing, he's probably sewn into my life with nothing to gain more than anybody else that I've known in the last 25 years. And so it's not all spiritual. I just reference that because I care about the eternal being that is him. Anyway.
Yeah.
For you, Thomas, you've held a lot of cool roles. What was it for you? Because having a title or a position doesn't necessarily make you a leader. What was it for you that helped you take those steps into true leadership development and developing the person Thomas is so he can effectively lead other people?
Yeah, no, I think, when I first started here, I really spent some time getting to know the leadership team. I'd been with a couple different organizations at that standpoint, kind of had a vision for how I thought banking could be done in Harrisonburg that was different than what I was able to do at those past organizations. And I kind of laid it out. I said, here's who I am. Here's my mission, vision. Here are my values for what the bank could look like. And again, these were business centric values, right? These certainly rooted in who I am as a person, but it was like, this is how I think this should be done. And having a management team that bought into that and said, no, this fits exactly with what we want to do. That sort of gave me the opportunity to like really lean into it. And, it's funny, our CEO, Bob Chapman's a wonderful guy. I mean, he's the kind of leader you'd run through a wall for. But early on, I was trying to be diplomatic and so kind of asking for, hey, some feedback on a rate structure for CDs, right? And he called me and he left me a voicemail. I was like, Thomas, I don't want to sound like a jerk here, but this is what we hired you for. So you tell us what you need and we'll tell you if we can do it. And it was just one of those kind of clarifying things for me. It's like, oh, they really have just given me the keys. It's time to go run with this and see what I can do. And I'm not a true entrepreneur. I don't have a whole lot of side hustles or side businesses, but that entrepreneurial spirit, like I've got a little bit of that in me. And it's been fun to be able to grow, this portion of Bank of the James and kind of set an example that was always a little bit different than how it used to be done, and to be able to see that success. And then that's kind of played forward. When I got asked to be the EVP, at first I sort of turned it down. I said, I'm not really looking for a title or more responsibility. I've got a good thing going here. I don't want to take away from time with family and community. And when my boss started to describe, our president, Mike Syrick, started to describe all the reasons that he wanted me in the role, they weren't because I had produced the most loans. They weren't because, I ran our paycheck protection program for the bank during COVID. They weren't because of all these, things that were hitting. There were reasons like, well, when you're walk into a room, you make sure everybody in the room feels valued, right? When you disagree with somebody, you let them be heard, and you make sure that they understand that you recognize where they're coming from, even if you disagree from them, right? You make people feel like they're cared about in meetings and in disagreements and arguments. And so it was just like, on and on and on. And I thought to myself, I was like, well, yeah, those are the kind of leaders I would want to follow. So if that's the reason you want me in this position, let's give it a shot and let's give it a go, right? And that's worked out pretty well for us, I think.
Well, I will echo his statements. I mean, those are the things that I've absolutely felt in the decade that we've known one another. I watch you, listen. We've disagreed on plenty of things, but we've maintained a really good friendship through the process. You've always made me feel valued. You always make me feel welcome wherever it's at. And I can count on a hug every single time that we get together. And I absolutely love that, brother.
Yeah.
Now, from the very beginning, you may be one of 2 or 3 folks that have been partnered with me and Cindy on every public event that we've hosted since 2015. What was it initially that you said, yeah, I'll lock arms with you. I'll trust you enough this first time, but we'll live to lead Harrisonburg, but continued over the years. Now, just this past Friday on the Leadership Legacy experience, and I'll probably be counting on you in some shape, form, or fashion as we move into 2026 for the event that we're already planning on, Values.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a lot of it, so it stems from, your earlier introduction, right? I mean, I'd gotten to know Rob a little bit at that point in time. I knew Travis Vance, really still close with him over these years. And so when they're like, hey, this is a guy I think you'd like to know, I think you'd really like him. It was that warm introduction that, like, it just didn't take us as long as it might to get to know each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I went into that with trust because my friends that I trusted you, right? And so when you start a relationship with that foundation of trust, and sometimes you got to build to it, right? It doesn't happen right away. But when you can start with that, and then just kind of hearing your vision, hearing your ideas, it's like, yeah, no, this is value. I know clients that could use this. I know people that could use this. And I think you were sort of felt like you were hitting it in a different wavelength than maybe some of the other stuff that we were doing in the Valley, not just us, but others. Right. And so it was just an easy yes early on. And then, seeing the success, hearing from folks after those events, their takeaways, it's like, this is something we want to continue to invest in. And it has benefited. I mean, we've sent, teammates to Live to Lead events. I had teammates there at the event on Friday, and, they get value out of it. And that's great. But also seeing the value that it creates for people outside of our organization. And, if we've got a stronger set of leaders in our community, that's good for everybody, right? From a business perspective, from a holistic perspective, it's what we need.
Yeah, we heard Mark say several times, and as a quick side note, Cindy and I sat right behind Patrick throughout most of the day on Friday, so it was neat to have that interaction with him.
Yeah.
But we heard Mark say several times throughout the day that everybody deserves to be led well. And
yes,
everybody might have a supervisor or manager, but not everybody currently gets led well. So I feel that is a responsibility.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked a lot about our personal relationship, our friendship, our business relationship. Talk to me a little bit about what you do, what your team at Bank of the James does, and what the community probably doesn't understand. Oh, it's just another bank.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, so I actually was talking to somebody on Friday. I said, one of the kind of the neat features we have is, most organizations, banks in particular, will tell you that their people are their greatest asset, right? That's that you hear it all the time. The difference is we believe it, and we actually treat it like that's true, right? I mean, we, it's our CEO, our president, our leadership team, we talk about all the time, when we hire somebody, we're not hiring a person, we're hiring their family, right? Like, it's more than just one person, right? We need to think about it like when we make decisions about where we're going to put people in leadership, or if we're going to give them an opportunity for promotion or not give them an opportunity because we don't think they're ready, it just doesn't influence them, right? And at the end of the day, what we do is not overly different. I mean, I think we've got some good experience. Like I said, I've got 20 years experience collectively. We've got, one of the most experienced mortgage guys in the business. And, so we do some things really well, but they're not unique things. We just, we take that, hey, let's empower, let's grow, let's make sure we have the best possible people for those roles. And then the benefit of that is that when a client walks in, they get that service level. They get somebody that not only knows what they're doing, but has the confidence that they know that their management and their leadership knows that they know what they're doing, right? And that's key, because we've had, you mentioned Patrick, Chris Beach. I mean, now, Megan that's on board. None of these folks had banking experience when they came to us, right? And so, what we've tried to do is give them an opportunity. It's like, yeah, you can make a couple small mistakes. Let's keep them the dollar size of that as little as possible, right? But I don't expect you to get it right away, but know that I'm always going to be here. Others are always going to be here. And, when I'm on vacation, they know who they can reach out to, and folks jump right in to help them out. And it's never, well, that's not my job. Right. And because it's about the people. Right. And so I think that really sets us apart. We're not just a bunch of FTEs. We operate a lot closer to a family. The folks on the executive team, I mean, they're my friends. One of the guys and I go hunting together every year. I mean, like, it's, even if you were to drop a job opportunity with a 2x, 3x salary, it'd be like, why would I want to do that? I'm having fun. I'm having fun with my friends, and I'm helping people come up and become better versions of themselves. why would I want to leave that opportunity, right? And so when you have that kind of culture, I think that then permeates into the client experience. I hope it does, at least. When you've got more confident, more happy employees, the clients get better treatment. They experience that. They hopefully feel some of that love coming to them. And I think that's just been the secret sauce for us over the years. And it predates me. It's why it's been such a great fit, right? Like, I didn't create this culture. I feel like we've sort of taken it to the next level in Harrisonburg, and we've tried to model some of the stuff we're doing here in other areas. But yeah, it's been a cool experience. That, not knocking the other places I was at, but we never really quite had all of that put together.
Yeah, I made a comment on Friday that in regards to purpose, in that employees rarely shy away from tasks because of difficulty, risk, or lack of compensation. They shy away because they don't have a clear purpose. And you just said it. A friend of ours who Mark Cole introduced us to, his name's Jeff Henderson. In his book, Know What You're For, he says that employees who know they're cared for, care for their customers. And you detailed both of those things so absolutely well. And gosh, it's a family.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
No, you specifically, but as an organization, you've been very intentional about being involved in things that really serve the community and even in your industry. Can you talk about something that you've spearheaded and how it's had an impact on the community, or even within your industry, how you've raised the bar?
Yeah, no. So it's so you say spearhead, and it's interesting because I've been a part of some things that were really cool, but I would never say I spearheaded them, right? Like, you talk about the Valley Business Keynote, which has been going on for what, 12, 13 years now. Great event, sort of kind of in the same channel of what you're doing as Live to Lead, but a little bit different wavelength, right? That was never my idea, right? That was our buddy Travis's idea, Chris Runyon's idea. I just helped him make it happen. Right. And so, everybody can look to me because I'm the guy that's still on the committee, mostly because my Rotary Club manages the finances of it. Right. But I'm more the historian than I am anything. But and even now, like, the team that does it, like, my role is not to control who the speaker is, control the format. It's to try to empower those committee members and those teammates to be able to feel like they can make the right decisions, and then back them. Even if it's not a decision I would have made, back them so they know they've got that support, right? Mm-hmm. I think about my time on the RMH Foundation board. We achieved some great stuff, and it was funny when I was rolling off of there after serving as chair. I was talking with Corey Davies. I was like, Corey, man, I don't know that I really helped you guys raise a whole lot of money. He goes, "What are you talking about?" And he named like 5 people that I had just made an introduction to, that had become major donors to campaigns that they were having, that they didn't otherwise have a strong connection with. But because I made that connection, and it just had never occurred to me, because it was just, well, hey, I'm just sharing friends and ideas with friends, right? It wasn't, from a fundraising standpoint. So, had similar experiences with United Way, served on the leadership HR, committee for a while. And just, I never wanted to be the top dog in those. I mean, maybe early in my career I had those aspirations, but later it was more like, no, what can I do to help? And in doing so, it empowered the people that were really good at what they're doing to do it even better, right?
So this next question you've already touched on, but I want you to go a little bit deeper into it. You mentioned how it was such a good fit. What can you talk about with the purpose of Bank of the James and how it aligned with your personal values and purpose that made it such a good fit for you early on?
Yeah. I mean, I think while Bank of the James would not say it's others focused, I mean, we are intentionally focused on the individual client and the individual employee, right? Like, that's a big piece of who we are. And so when you start focusing on the individual instead of, an FTE or, a customer account number or something like that, it changes how you do what you do, right? Like, if the individual is not hitting their goals, it's like, well, why aren't they hitting their goals? Am I not giving them are they not in the right seat, or are they just not getting the right training? Is it not the right support? Like, what is it? And we've had some folks that we've had to kind of shift around. And then there's the personal side of, when we opened Bank of the James here in Harrisonburg, we did a ribbon cutting on a Thursday, I think it was, with the chamber. My father got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer that following Tuesday. At no point in time did anybody in management ask me, well, what are you going to do to hit your goals? Or, what's this going to do? If anything, they were upset at how much I was working during that time period, right? As he was passing on. And, so it really was just a recognition that like, hey, we've got the right guy. This isn't the right season. Right. And so, we had a 6-month period where we didn't have much growth because of the personal stuff that was going on. But if you look at the last 10 years, we've killed it. Right. And having felt that, I've had, employees over times that have had different seasons of life. And at times where I was like, is this going to work out? And now they're some of the best employees I've got because we stayed with them through it, right? Like we kind of, you hold them accountable. They still have a job to do, right? But recognizing this is not their best self and this is not going to last forever, right? And so I think just that kind of personal touch, and the bigger we get, the harder it gets, right? The bigger you get as an organization. But I hope we never lose that. And you got to be careful for people taking advantage of it, right? But I'd rather get burnt on somebody taking advantage of that than do it the other way.
Well, you said a couple things there. You said still have high expectations and hold them accountable to it, but love them through the process and ask that question. What am I not giving you that you need? Yeah, I'll give it to you. I mean, we do a lesson on candid conversations, actually a couple lessons that we build into some different platforms. And that's one of the pieces that we stress. Are you asking that question before you have the tough conversation? What did this person need that I didn't give them?
Yeah.
And we've all seen it. Hey, it's your fault. I'm going to tell you it's wrong. I'm just not going to tell you what you can do different. Wait a minute, that's not fair.
Yeah. No, I mean, when I joined, really the last couple of organizations I've been a part of, when I've joined them, I said, I've set clear expectations. This is who I am. This is how I operate. This is what I need. And this is what I can provide. And, and the organizations always give you that same response, but they don't always live up to it. And I think, here at Bank of the James, they've not only did they live up to it, they exceeded their expectations. They set the bar here and they ended up meeting it here. I get a year in, I'm like, I never thought it could be this good, right? Like, I mean, it was, coming, it's still, when I came here 10 years ago, we were still reeling from the 2008 crisis, right? Banking had gotten tough. Regulations were more, they're still increasing every day, right? But it had gotten a lot less fun. And it's sort of like, could this ever be fun again? And all of a sudden here I am, and it is. But I think it's fun because that fit, right? Like, there are certain folks that wouldn't be a great fit at Bank of the James, and it doesn't mean they're bad people. It's got to be that right cultural fit. It's got to be that right alignment of values and purpose. And, this just happened to be the place for me. And again, those other places I was at have had tremendous success since I left. Like they didn't need me, right? They're doing just fine. But it just wasn't a good alignment with me. Right.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I did the HR thing for so long, and there's still a couple of small companies that I have a hand in the recruiting and hiring process. And the only reason I'm willing to do it, because it sucks the life out of me, quite frankly.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm willing to do it is because they hire on values and purpose, just like you said, not on talent and ability. Obviously, you've got to have some requisite skill sets in place. You've got to be able to do it. You can't make a dog a cat's what one of my buddies says. But the reality is, if it's not a values fit, I don't care how good you are at the technical.
Yeah.
And I don't care how much you need to grow in the technical if it is a values fit. We can work through either of those things.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. Yeah. But one of the things too, like when you have alignment of values, right, and we have alignment of purpose, understanding, you can rethink roles, right? I mean, one of the reasons we've had so much success here in the Harrisonburg market, and again, we don't have some of the constraints of other markets, right? We don't have to have the back office and operations, which takes a certain level of skill set, right? Like that, not everybody, I'm not a detail person. I would be terrible at that job, right? But what we've looked at is like, okay, well, what opportunities can I give my team that can take work off of me so that I can go do the things that bring the most value to the organization, right? Because you don't, early on when it was just me and a cell phone and a copier, I would make copies, I'm running tickets, I'm doing everything, right? Because we didn't have enough critical mass where that mattered. But over time, for me to give all of my clients the value that they need, I can't do all the little stuff too, right? And so, early on, I started kind of trying to bring folks along. And, I learned early, I would get a little frustrated because they wouldn't do it as good as I did it. Right. They wouldn't do it the way I did it. And honestly, it's probably more the second one than it was the first one. They were doing it just fine. It's just not the way I would do it. And I can struggle with control a little bit. And I got to the point, I was like, if they can do it at 70% of the level that I want it done at, whether that's the right level or not, that still takes enough time off of me to be able to go do the thing that's going to add a whole lot more value than they've been trained to add because they don't have the experience, right? And so that's sort of been the model here in Harrisonburg, and it's worked out phenomenally for Chris, for Patrick. I mean, those guys are rock stars within the organization, just because they always said yes. They're like, they always wanted more. They were hungry for more, and hoping that Megan's going to follow in that suit. I feel like she's got some of that in her as well. So
very cool. Yeah, the interaction with Chris and Patrick over the years, I just love those guys. I mean, as the friendship, not just the professional interaction. Chris and I trade messages periodically about music and different things like that. I mean, you've got a cool team, and of course, Megan is my first cousin. Our dads are brothers, and so on. I don't know if you knew that before, but you do now.
I did not know that. No, she didn't lay that card on the table, so she got it fair and square without.
Yeah, good.
And I'm not going to tell you whether that would have helped or hurt her, but
hopefully, yeah. Hey, if it's my son, I mean, my son, where he's working, I'm close personal friends with the guy that hired him. And it was in spite of me saying, this is not what I want. It was, he's going to make his own. It is what it is. I've worked for mine. And Thomas, that really leads me to the final question before I open it up for whatever. You've mentored a lot of folks, and not always younger folks, but this is really geared at younger folks. What advice would you give somebody that's aspiring to grow into a leadership role? And again, I stress leadership, not supervisor, manager, but really to have a positive impact on folks. How would you help them grow in their careers?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, I would say, like, I agree with you now. If you would have said that a couple of years ago, I'm like, I've never mentored anybody, but I mean, we have a mutual friend that I won't mention that, we were at an event and he's like, well, Thomas has been a huge mentor to me. And I had always kind of looked at him as a peer, just trying to help him out. I mean, I almost brought tears to my eyes that he thought of me that way. Right. And, I think the reality is, like, I have been a part of formal mentorship programs, right? I have, signed up some, JMU kids, high school kids, right? Like and Bridgewater, probably the three that have been the most formal, right? And those are great experiences, but probably the ones that I value the most and the people that would look to me as a mentor the most are not folks that I would consider to have mentored. They're just people I walked with or helped, or just, again, if you're trying to empower people, that can look like a lot of different things. So I think the advice I would have for young people is, like, find those folks in your organization, in your community, that you just kind of look up to and say, hey, there's something different about that individual. Or, I really like the way they do things, or they've had success, and just be intentional about seeking time with them. Right. And it could just be getting coffee, getting lunch, getting, whatever. Right. And, just make sure it's the intentionality and it's the consistency that leads to those mentorship opportunities. Early on in my career, I kind of pegged a couple of folks within my organization to just learn from, and, even would go to them, like, hey, can you show me how to do this? Or, hey, I would ask them, like, open-ended questions, just trying to learn. And sometimes you learn what not to do in those answers. Right. I mean, time and time again, I heard, older lenders say, like, I wish I would have spent more time with family. I wish I would have spent more time with family. I will probably say the same thing late in my career, but I'm going to have a lot less, I'm going to have a lot less to say about that, because I've been obnoxiously in my kids' lives, right? And still have a great relationship with two teenagers, one of them being a teenage girl. So that's a hard ask to do, right? But I've been there, and I've always, and I've been there a lot, because I saw that was something that folks missed out on, and yet the career is taking care of itself. But yeah, it's just, and, there's even, like, the guy I would say was probably my biggest mentor in lending. He would not, like, I've told him he's that, and he just blushed. He's like, no, that wasn't my role. That wasn't I'm like, no, well, it kind of was. I made him a mentor just by learning from him. Right. And so I think it's that consistency. It's that intentionality of spending time with people and just trying to learn from them. And, I think the right kind of people will pour in. They'll pay it forward. And when you find those folks, just kind of latch on. Don't become needy. Don't, like, make it a big deal. Just continue to spend time and continue to learn, and, good things will come of that. Right. And that's really mentorship at its simplest form.
I'm just giddy about everything you shared. You don't know this yet. You know that I've just finished about a month ago a book on values. That's what we'll be themed on over the next year for the event we're doing next June. What I've started now is a book on the power of professional relationships. It's a working title. I don't have the real title for it, but it's really going through the process. And I'm going to ask this: of the folks that you've reached out to, the best ones, were they ones that made time for you, or they ones that brushed you off?
There were definitely ones that made time for me. Now, they weren't going to come to me and schedule it, but when I would reach out, they were always busy. They were always too busy to spend time with me, but they still chose to do so. Right. And that's been something that I've taken to heart, that, if I get, a young kid reaches out to me, or really anybody up. I mean, I've had the chance to walk with folks older than me, and that's been very humbling that I could add value to somebody that's got 5-10 years on me. Right. But it's been great. And I've never had the time. I'm always busy. If I'm 2 weeks behind on my to-do list, I'm as caught up as I'm ever going to be. Right. And, but I also have learned that, like, I get so much out of just helping other people that it fills up my cups. I'm better at my job when I come back to do it. Right. And so if I can take, if it's been a couple of weeks since I've spent time just, being with somebody, and it doesn't always have to be from a mentorship standpoint, right? It could just be friends getting together, but, always with the intent of, like, what can I do to help? Right. And, and those are folks all across the spectrum, right? As far as, like, business relationships, personal relationships, that kind of thing. And so it's really just, I have come to believe that, and, I've got a cool story for another day maybe, but, like, there's power in presence, right? It's one thing to send a text. It's one thing to give a phone call, and those things can be very helpful and important, but choosing to take time out of your day, time being probably the most valuable asset we have, and spend it with another individual. There's just a lot of good that can come with that.
The message I'll share with folks from that is, if you're young or you're looking for that mentorship, ask. People are going to say yes.
Yeah.
They're busy, but they're going to make time.
Yeah. I had a high school student one time, his coach was introducing us. I was like, well, hey, give me a call. Come on by the office, or I can meet you somewhere. We can get, coffee or something. And he's like, you would do that? I was like, yeah. I was like, do you know how many students I turned down a year? He's like, how many? I was like, none. I said, do you know how many students ask me a year? He's like, oh, I don't know, like 23. I said, none. They just don't do it. Right. And maybe it's not me, but as I talk to other peers, they're not doing it with them either. Right. So, if you're a high school student, if you're a college student, if you're a young professional, especially, you'd be surprised at how many people will say yes. And there is a little chance for rejection, as always, but right. You ask enough, you're going to find those people that'll say yes.
Hey, that's the only reason Mark Cole was with us this past Friday, and he'll be back with us on June 12th of 2026, is because I'm going to ask until he tells me no.
Right.
He's not going to hit me, and he's not any bigger than me. Even if he does hit me, I'll heal. It'll be okay.
Well, and our good friend Travis Vance, I love this line. I'd heard it different ways. But he's like, you're starting to know if you haven't asked. So if you ask, I mean, you might still be a no, but you might get to a yes or a maybe, right? But you're at no right now. So let's see if we can move it off a no.
Yeah. And ask. So, hey, I've asked you structured questions. What have I not asked you that you just want to make sure that we get out there to share, whether it's Bank of the James related, leadership development related, open-ended? This is you.
That's a good. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't want to get on a advertisement for the bank. I mean, I feel like we've, happy to have those conversations offline. I think from a leadership standpoint, we've hit on a lot of it, but I think if you're truly going to be others focused, can you identify who those others are, right? Do you know who you're spending time with, who you're walking with in a given season, and knowing that that's going to change. And some people it's just for a couple months. Some people it's for a semester. Some people it's for a lifetime, right? And but if you can't name those couple people that you're just spending time with without trying to sell them something, without making it about you, I think you ought to take that to heart, right? So who are we making time for? And if you think about the idea of legacy, right? Like you're talking about a legacy summit, right? So I can't tell you what my great grandparents did for a living, right? I would venture to say there's probably some in the Valley that can, because we've got some deep-rooted folks here. But by and large, most people probably can't answer that great grandparents, what they did for a living. So what we're doing as a job is not going to last more than 1 or 2 generations, right, in the memories. But what we can instill on our families, on our children, on the people in our community around us, that has a chance to be a legacy that's far greater than anything our names can be attached to. So, it's there's a lot of value to be had there. And I think, as we pour into that, as I've mentioned, like it fills us up. It's not a prideful thing. it's not a overconfidence or cocky thing. It's just, wow, if I can help somebody else, that makes you happy. And if you're happy, you're a better person, better worker, right? And a better leader.
Yeah. A good friend of mine, Thomas, tells me each time he and I talk, he says, you'll never know this side of heaven, the people that you're impacting. And each time he says it, I absolutely melt. I'm in tears. Takes me time to get my composure. But Thomas, that's also the one statement that keeps me going through the stupid days where we're going, is it really worth it? Should we do this instead?
Yeah.
And that's the piece, 100%. I'll never know this side of heaven. So keep pushing. Got to do what I'm going to do. So, brother, I truly appreciate you doing this. Hang with me as I bring it to the close. So for the folks of you accessing this, maybe it's live on one of our social media platforms. Hopefully it's through the digital course that's tied to the 2025 Leadership Legacy experience. I highly encourage you to know Thomas. That's why we're doing these. Thomas has been a key partner for us for years. Understand what his organization does. It is a commercial for you. So that's why we want to do those. But just as importantly, look at the folks that you can sow into and the folks that you can ask to sow into you as you're getting this. If you need continuing education credit from this, send me or Cindy an email. Actually, send it to admin@dove-development.net, and we'll hook you up, even if it's not part of this course, if you're seeing this live, with a 45-day all-access trial to one of our programs that has over 160 lessons in it and so on and so forth, all approved for credit from the Society for Human Resource Management, Human Resource Certification Institute, and a few others. Love to be a blessing in your life. With that said, Thomas, thank you again for taking the time to do this. You are a rock star. Appreciate your friendship.
Well, I appreciate you, Wes, and Cindy as well. And just, thanks for all you're doing in the community.
Make it a great day, guys. God bless.